And welcome back to episode number 59 of Raise the Banner Podcast. I'm one of your three co-hosts, as usual, McAtor here with Zach Brewitt and Benny Ballgame Dearth. Boys, how we doing?
Great.
Doing good. Doing well.
It's a good Thursday night. We got Thursday Night Football coming up. But since we last talked, the Red Sox finally did something. Garrett Crochet is a Boston Red Sox, and that's kind of where we'll start it off here. What do you guys think of the trade and how, that first step into getting an ace, how big is that for this team?
Certainly huge. I graded as an A-, and I only threw the minus in there because I was really hoping that they weren't going to have to trade any of the big four. They obviously moved Montgomery, who I really like, but you have no clue what he is. He's coming off a pretty significant leg injury. Obviously, the upside is there, but he's still a massive wild card. Like, he's the number 5 ranked prospect only on college production.
Where he's drafted.
And where he was drafted, which was, what, 7?
He was 12th, I believe.
12th, I think.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought they had a top 10 pick when they took him. So that's the reason I gave it an A- was the fact that I was really hoping they wouldn't have to give up any of the top 4. I understand that you had to. It was just more like hoping that they wouldn't need to, but certainly did what they needed to. As far as that first step, they lose out on Juan Soto. Disappointed. Can't really say I'm surprised, but still disappointed to get that news. And then, of course, they were in on Fried, but the Yankees immediately pivoted after they lost Soto, so we lost out on Fried. And then, of course, there's the talk that they weren't going to pay Corbin Burns because Fried gets $218 million, so now Burns is probably at $250 plus. I love the player. I don't know. He's been his K rate has been declining over the last 3 seasons, which doesn't really speak well of a long-term deal on a guy who's already 30, and his best pitch is the cutter getting strikeouts. So if his strikeout rate is declining, that's a little concerning. So wasn't really feeling great about Corbin Burns, but hopefully this is the first step of many. Love the move. Wish Kyle Teal the best. Really hope that he would have been, theoretically the catcher of the future. Matt, you kind of hit the nail on the head on X the other day. The 2025 catcher class is pretty deep.
How shocking.
Huh? That you hit the nail on the head?
How shocking.
Yeah, right. But yeah, the 2025 catching class is pretty deep. There should be 2 guys who might be both top 15 picks, solidly top 20. Barring an injury, but certainly a deep class, and they still have control over Wong for 4 more years. So they certainly have the flexibility to move Teal. Obviously wishing the best. Had hoped that he'd be a Red Sox for a while, but in the end, if you want the guy with the upside, you got to give up guys with upside, which is what they did. So, glad they made the move, and now the question becomes, which I'm sure we'll dive into, making sure we can extend Crochet beyond 2026.
Yep. Zach?
Yeah, for me, I would the Chris Cotillo method. Originally thought it was slight overpay. Once I had a chance to digest it, kind of think about it more, I really liked it. More and more I thought that, when I thought that Kyle Teal was just the headliner, I really loved it. And then learned that it was Meteoroth, it was Wikelman Gonzalez, and then Braden Montgomery. Montgomery and Teal being the 2 headliners for me, I kind of thought you might have been able to get away with one of them. But where you're going to play them, you don't know, as Ben said, you don't know where or what Braden Montgomery is going to be. So love the trade. Vibes were very low after Max Fried went to the Yankees. But like another just,
Sox fans
empty promises.
Panic.
Oh,
yeah.
X was a disaster. Red Sox Twitter.
It was a cesspool, myself included. The pitchforks were coming out. The torches were coming out.
Yep.
So they needed to make a move. They absolutely, filled two huge holes. Left-handed starting pitcher, and they talked about young, controllable arms forever. They got that. I'll probably go B+ if I had to give it a grade until they can extend him. Which I think is going to get done. They're already talking about extending him, and I know last year at the deadline, I think it was, Crochet was very open to an extension and said that he wouldn't be traded unless the team getting him wanted to extend him. So excited that we finally have kind of a headliner instead of these mix and match, pick and pop type starters. But now the question is, like, who are we going to supplement him with? Is it going to be right-handed bat? Are we going to go get a Burns? As unlikely as that sounds. So yeah, excited. Felt like it needed to happen. So we'll see where they go, but vibes are higher than they were, at least after Fried got signed.
For sure.
Definitely can't go down from after Fried got signed.
No, we cannot go down at all.
No, I mean, you guys kind of hit it on the head right there. Overall, the biggest thing for me with giving up what we gave up is two things. One, I'm a big Kyle Teal fan, and a good catcher can be really valuable in your lineup. But I also felt like it's very difficult to become an elite catcher. And unless he was going to hit that, like, he was probably not going to live up to the hype that people had for him. And then Brady Montgomery, again, like you guys said, we don't know really anything from him other than what he did in college. And more importantly, like, people can fall in love with all these prospects, but like, where are they going to all play? Like, if Brady Montgomery is ready for the start of, I don't know, let's say mid next year, or maybe 2027, like, what's the outfield going to be? There's 3, 4, potentially 5 young good options already in the outfield. So it's just like, all right, like, yeah, he's a good prospect, but like, he doesn't really fit here long term. And if you can use him to get a very legit young pitcher, that's desperately what we need, and why it kind of just made a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, I mean,
going to use all your prospects, then use them for trade chips. That's exactly what they did.
Well, I didn't like, I use it as an excuse to toot the Heim horn all the time, but when they make a deal like that, it's, you heard the crying screams when we needed pitching in the farm system, and they kept taking positional players, and everyone was crying. You need a pitcher.
I'm one of those guys. I still am one of those guys.
Yeah, you need a pitcher. You need a pitcher, and it's like, yeah, okay. Well, do you want me to draft this 18-year-old kid that's not going to help the roster for 6 years? Not going to be in the majors for 6 years.
Yep.
Not to mention how bad we are at developing pitching over the course.
Yeah, well, and I've said it so many times to people, and it's the goal. It's hard to draft in the MLB. The goal is to get a quality player. The goal is to get a quality player, Benjamin.
I know.
And what has happened over the last 6 months? We saw Nick York, who was our first-round pick in 2021, I believe, traded for Quinn Priester, a young pitcher with upside. Excuse me. Okay, it was just someone screaming out my window.
2020 draft was Nick York, if you're looking.
Yeah, 2020, and then obviously we just saw Kyle Teal in Montgomery headlining a deal for another young pitcher. So that's 3 first-round picks, and it has turned out into a solidified, probably ace going forward, and a young guy with potential. I think he has number 3. Maybe number 2 potential if he hits the ceiling in Priester.
Yeah. It's funny because I was so I'm a, I don't know, slightly above casual college baseball fan, I would say. And so I kind of geeked out when MLB released their first 2025 mock draft, which is why I just thought it was funny you brought up the drafting the best player available. And sure enough, the Red Sox are being mocked to draft a shortstop 15th overall in the 2025 MLB draft because, Lord knows we haven't taken enough first-round shortstops over the last 25 years. But, yeah, I mean, obviously, especially in baseball, the goal is to get, more so than any other sport, is the best available player at that specific spot in the draft. It's rare that players make immediate impact at the big league level, relatively shortly after being drafted. It takes a couple of years. Obviously, pitchers takes a little bit longer. But, like you said, they utilized assets that didn't have a future or may or may not have had a future in order to acquire somebody who has a ton of upside. In order to add to this rotation. Power lefty, 209 strikeouts in 146 innings last year. I off the top of my head, I haven't extrapolated the numbers out, but over a full season, that's a lot of strikeouts for a team that doesn't really strike out a ton of guys. I'll be curious to see what, if anything, Breslow and Andrew Bailey do to kind of how he throws. Again, power lefty, he can touch triple digits, but they utilize their assets to get him. And I kind of expected them, when they went out and got a Garrett Crochet type, to move somebody in the outfield that they felt didn't fit the long-term picture. Not that I thought he was untouchable, but Braden Montgomery didn't really fit that thought process in my head. Like, I thought it would have been like, okay, are they going to is it going to be, Weiler Abreu as the centerpiece of a trade because they really feel like Roman Anthony is up and coming and can immediately, kind of fill the hole that Weiler Abreu leaves by moving him out of right field over to Chicago. Obviously they didn't want to do that. Whether the White Sox had no interest or the Red Sox had no interest in moving him, we may never know, but they did what they needed to, and hopefully he can be what they need him to be, now moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
For me, I want to make sure that, not make sure really, but he was on a pitch count last year. Are they going to have the same mentality going forward? I don't know. One of the things that intrigues me the most about Corbin Burns, I know all the talk about his strikeout rate declining year over year and things like that, but he's pitched 200 innings multiple times in his career. He just did it again in the AL East, right? All the talk about, can a pitcher who comes in, can he compete in the AL East? Well, he just did it in Baltimore. Pitched 200 innings, 15-9 with, I think he had a sub-3 ERA, but if not, it was right around 3. So he's someone who intrigues me the most, even more so than a Max Fried. Max Fried, I know he was my state your take a couple weeks ago. But that being said, I still had my concerns about him going in, and I think one of them was, durability. One of it was, I don't know. I saw a stat that said he had one of the higher postseason ERAs. I have to confirm that, but it was one of the highest postseason ERAs, at least of the past 5 years or something like that. So, will be interesting to see how they approach Crochet going forward. Are they going to just give him the keys and let it ride, or are they going to have him on a pitch count too and kind of ease him into it? I don't know, but I want to make sure that I kind of have that in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Garrett Crochet is he had Tommy John in 2022. He was a reliever. Obviously, he was a reliever coming out of college. Started, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. He was a starter at Tennessee and just kind of fit right into the bullpen with the White Sox. And to your point, because of the Tommy John, that's why he was on an innings limit. They didn't want to overuse him, 2 years removed from Tommy John, on top of the fact that they were converting him from a relief pitcher to a starter. So I'd like to see, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I want them to have him go out there and, assuming health, just say, 32, 33 starts, no limitations. And then, and risk something. I mean, if he's ready to go, obviously the team's going to have the best idea of how his arm is feeling, what his health is like, his conditioning, everything top to bottom. They're going to have the best case, best knowledge for that. So, I trust them to make the right decision there. It seems like, Breslow has a better feel for how the pitchers are doing. Not to say that he may not have done a great job last year, but more so due to a lack of options. So I don't know as if you can say, you'll get 32 starts and 200 innings out of him. But, I would say, I'd like to see that, assuming he's fully healthy, that you're going to get 180 plus out of him. I mean, obviously they're playing the long game. He doesn't turn 26 until mid-June, so you certainly don't want to burn him out. 2 years before you're hopefully signing him to, a long-term deal to keep him here.
Yeah, well, you'll probably see them do the same thing they did with Houck this year. This year was the first time Houck had really gone that deep into a season. They can just feel how he's going. Obviously, it will depend on where the Sox are and stuff like that. But they could feel how he's going come, July, August, and say, hey, like, are you feeling any wear and tear? Are you kind of feeling tired, or your arm not recovering the same way? And skip starts if they need to here and there.
Yeah.
But I expect 180 minimum. Like in 200, if he's fully healthy, I would expect him to hit over 200 innings.
Yeah, and so I was just looking it up. So he made 32 starts last year, and threw 146 innings, which is roughly 4.5 innings a start, which is indicative of them trying to ease him back from A, Tommy John, B, going
after the deadline. After the deadline, they agreed that he wasn't going to pitch more than 5 innings. So the last 10 to 12 starts, no matter what happened, he came out after 5 at the most.
Yeah.
Sometimes a lot of times it was 4.
Yeah. So if he goes 180, so 180 innings over 32 starts is about 5.5 innings a start, 5 2/3 innings, kind of somewhere in that ballpark. So, if they can get, and I get that baseball's different now, the days of, your ace, the days of, we'll pull you when you're tired or getting shelled, like those days are long gone. So, if they can get, 6-7 innings out of him a night, I think that's, and I don't even necessarily say it has to be 7, but if you can get 6+ out of him, I think that, that's a victory. I mean, obviously it's not, there's going to be, better days and bad days, but if you can get 6 out of him on average, I think they'll be in good shape.
Yeah, don't wear them down and throw them out there and say, no, you're going 7 innings minimum. Like, you always got to keep an eye on it. But so as long as you got to have them some idea.
Yeah, so if you look at his splits, so last year in May, let's see, does it say how many starts he made in each month? It doesn't say on Fangraphs. But in May, so March and April, 34 2/3 innings. May, 29 innings. June, 37 2/3. And then July, 13. August, 14. September and October, 17 1/3. So first half, he threw 107 1/3 innings and only 38 2/3 in the second half. He was very much a first half pitcher. His ERA went up over 2 runs a game in the second half. 3.02 first half ERA, 5.12 ERA second half, but only in 38 2/3 innings.
Yeah, I saw a tweet. I forget who put it out about the second half. Like his numbers going way up. I guess he had one start that he had 7 earned runs, and the rest were 2, 3, maybe 1. So I don't know how much that inflated the ERA. I'm sure it did a lot because I've been talking about him having like an innings limit. But yeah, if he's on a pitch count, last year, maybe they increase it to 160, 170, 180, Matt, as you said. I wouldn't expect a full 210, 200, just because, going from 150 all the way up to 200 feels like a pretty good jump. But what I would hate is okay, we have this guy, you wear him all the way down, and then you ruin his career again. So not that they're going to do that. I think that, as you said, Ben, I trust Breslow and I trust Andrew Bailey to know what they're doing with the kid and kind of ease him in, or at least monitor him well. But that's something to keep an eye on for sure.
How are you guys feeling? Obviously we got Crochet now. They're supposedly looking for another starter. Where do you see the most likely scenario, whether it's burn or trade or Flaherty or something like that? Where do you see this all kind of heading towards over the next few days?
Unfortunately, Pivetta. I know the negative Red Sox fan who gets his hopes up and is consistently burned is saying Pivetta. If they're not going to get a Burns, then my mind would go free agency, obviously, in Jack Flaherty. And if you're going to go trade route, I don't love the Casas for Castillo trade talks from Seattle. Straight up, I would try to
happening.
No, or at least I hope it's not going to happen. I think you can get much more value from Casas, but Flaherty would be my choice. If you're not going to get Burns on the free agent market, Flaherty. Walker Buehler scares me, injuries and things like that. But my gut tells me it's going to be another Pavetta, and they're going to sell us on the devil versus devil you don't.
Fair enough. Ben, how about you?
So I think it's definitely more the free agent route. I don't think they're going to spend on Burns. I know there's been a big hesitancy to give out big money contracts to quote unquote older pitchers. Milliken tweeted out last night a quote quoting Ken Rosenthal saying that after getting burned, and this is the quote. So, quote, after getting burned on 9-figure contracts for both Chris Sale and David Price, Red Sox owner John Henry is reluctant to award long-term deals to pitchers, according to sources briefed on his thinking, which tells you that Corbin Burns is probably not happening. You figure, assuming he gets, I mean, you would imagine he's going to get more money than Fried. That would be the largest pitching free agent contract the Red Sox gave out to anybody. And you would expect, Max Fried and Corbin Burns are basically the same age. So Burns is probably going to get 7 or 8 years, and you're looking at somewhere between $250 and $300 million. I said it earlier, I don't love Burns at that amount of money, which kind of sounds hypocritical because we talk about the Red Sox wanting to spend money. And I just don't love the peripheral stats decline with Burns. I'm a little different than Zach in respect of who I would go after. I don't mind going after a Walker Buehler. I think that yes, there's an injury history, but the upside is there. But again, would I be surprised if it was a Nick Pivetta? No. I think I'd rather Buehler than Jack Flaherty. I think that Flaherty's been too up and down. But, I think that, Flaherty and Lucas Giolito are more or less best friends, played on the same high school team together. They've been in touch over the course of the offseason, so kind of like how we talked about the connections between Max Fried and Lucas Giolito being maybe that's why Fried would come to Boston. You can't say that about Fried and then not say that about Flaherty. So it's certainly a possibility. If I had my choice, I'd probably want somebody like a Walker Buehler who has upside. If they go the trade route, I can't, there's really nobody else available other than a Luis Castillo, unless the Mariners pull a complete 180 and say, send us a top hitting prospect and you can have somebody like a Logan Gilbert or a Kirby or, and I'm blanking on his first name for whatever reason. But a Gilbert, a Kirby, a Miller, I don't think Bryson Kirby?
No, Bryson Miller.
George Kirby.
George Kirby, thank you. I was like, there's no way that Kirby's first name is Bryson. That's definitely not correct.
Do you buy into any of the Marlins talk, like the Jesus Luzardo and Alcantara stuff?
I haven't heard a ton of it. I get that Luzardo is probably a trade target. I wasn't as high on Luzardo. He was a free agent a year ago, correct? Or was it 2 years ago?
Traded from Oakland, or
was he traded from? Oh, was he traded from? When did he switch to Miami? Was it a year ago or 2 years ago?
At least 2 years ago.
I can look it up real quick, but he had one quote unquote full season, so I'm not.
Yeah, he was drafted by the Athletics.
Yeah, but when did he go to Miami? Let me see.
2021. He was traded.
Okay, so. He had maybe he was part of trade talks but he had really only had one full season, and that was in 2023. 32 starts, 3.58 ERA. Other than that, not a full season kind of guy. And then, of course, last year he only makes 12 starts, and he's not very good at all. I mean, I don't love it, but
I'm less high on him, especially now that we have a lefty. I'm like you. I don't love his stats. I don't think he's ever really been, an anchor of a rotation. I just keep hearing his name pop up. I keep forgetting if they're dangling Casas' name or Meyer's name for one of them, but I've heard both. But just curious, like if there was a burning desire to get one of those two on the team or not.
I mean, if they want one of the top guys, I think it's that they're within reach. I think if Seattle gets more serious about it and they want something like Tristan Casas, they know they're going to have to give up one of their young pitchers. It seems like they want to cut payroll, which is part of the reason why they're going to trade Castillo. But I mean, I think he's pretty easily attainable. But then I sit there and wonder, like, if he's owed, what is it, $370, I believe, over the next 3 years. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, well, if I could trade for Castillo and I have to give up assets and pay him $370, or I could take like a Walker Buehler for maybe 55, like I will rather just take the chance on Walker Buehler.
Yeah. So I don't know where you're getting the number from, but Luis Castillo only signed for $200 and some odd million.
Yeah, I said
that
3
many?
years.
I thought it was 5 and 1.
Oh, sorry. You were saying. I'm sorry. When you said 370, I'm like, there's no way that Luis Castillo is being paid $370 million.
No.
I know it's 3 years, $70 million left.
Yeah. So it's 24.1 for the next 3 years.
Is that the money or the tax?
That's the payroll. The cash payout is 22.75 for the next each year. Okay, for the next 3 years.
Yeah, so if he got traded, that's what it's more about the cash we're paying him, and the luxury tax number falls as well. But yeah, I mean he's very attainable. But I think right now what the Mariners are probably running into, and they're saying, oh, like, he's this guy that can be an ace and all that, but like no one's gonna give up major value for him right now until like Burns, Buehler, Flaherty, like those guys go off the market.
Yeah.
Because like, why are you going to give up something major for Castillo when you can just use money and sign one of these,
right?
Which pitchers that are in the same level, same tier at least.
Yeah, which is what I'd like to see them do. I get that. I mean, Crochet's making pennies on the dollar because he's still in arbitration. So the Sox still have what, $100 million in space before they have to worry about encroaching on the ceiling of the luxury tax. So
no, they're 52.
It's only 52.
Yeah. You got to remember, like, what Spotrac says is a lot lower than what their actual.
I was looking at that. Where is it here?
You got to go to Sox payroll on the Bird app, the X app. But no, I mean, it depends on how they want to approach it. Obviously, there's numerous paths, and obviously what they do with the right-handed bat, what they do with potentially another reliever, that can obviously play a big factor. You could see them say, okay, we're going to trade for another smaller money guy, whether it's one of the younger Mariners pitchers, whether it's like Jared Jones from Pittsburgh, something like that, and then they spend big on hitting. Whether it's Bregman, Teoscar, Pete Alonso, Santander. Is it Santander or Santander?
It's Santander, like the bank.
Oh, okay.
I've never known how to pronounce his name, so yeah.
Yeah, 51.04 million in 2025 is what they're currently. That's their space right now.
Yeah, so they have so many numerous paths, and even before like the trade for Crochet, we kept saying like we were in more of a panic after the Freed signing, but like there's still numerous paths that they can take, and I think obviously Breslow is balancing that where he's saying like I would like Castillo. I think 3 for $70 for Castillo is pretty reasonable, but I'm not going to give you I'm not going to give you Willie or Abreu. Like, why would I do that if I could just re-sign him? So I think he's going to Seattle and saying, we'll give you him, we'll take him, but like we're not giving you anything of major value because we know you want to get rid of him, and there's options in free agency that you could just get for money. Castillo at this point of his career, I don't think is like anything. You can't rely on him to be an ace anymore. I think he's a legit number 2, very legit number 2 for the next few years, but again, like you got to play the values of it, and Seattle's probably not getting the offers that they kind of hope for him.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I mean, I think with the history or lack thereof, I feel like you'd be able to get somebody like a Walker Buehler and not have to spend a ton of money. I feel as if, who really knows how they're going to shape out the rotation? I'd be really surprised, moderately surprised, if Garrett Crochet is your opening day starter. He certainly has the talent to do that. I just don't know if they would do that day one when they have guys who aren't, like a Brian Bayo, who's not necessarily coming off of an injury, in an innings limit. Somebody like a Tanner Houck, who hasn't, threw a career high innings last year, but, isn't necessarily on an innings limit. So, you could probably go get a guy like a Walker Buehler without spending a ton of money. And then, now you have, Garrett Crochet's your potential ace of the future. And then, you've got, Bayo, Giolito, Buehler, and Houck, who are all like ceiling number 2 starters.
Yeah.
I think that's that's probably not like so say you go get Buehler, right? You have Crochet, Buehler, Bayo, Houck, and Giolito. I would say that there's no Crochet aside because of the innings limit. You don't have an elite upside rotation, but the floor on that rotation, in my opinion, is very, very high.
Yeah, because we could realistically but like I think it's within the reach that all of them could have a season where they have like a 3-7 and below.
Yeah,
I don't think.
He had Tommy John in 2023, but Buehler's only, 2021. 33 starts, 16-4, 2.47 ERA, 212 strikeouts, and 207 innings.
He was filthy. He was filthy before Tommy John.
Really
good. Then he was hurt in 2022. I think I'm going to guess he made 12 starts in 2022. I'm going to guess he got hurt during the 2022 season and then missed all of 2023 because of the Tommy John.
Yes. Yeah, no, he has elite potential. Will he ever reach that again? You don't really bet on that, but I think he can absolutely be like a mid to high 3 guy. Again, we'll get back into at least that range. Giolito, we've seen it from Giolito in years past. Like he has 3, mid 3, high 3 ERA potential. Bayo, if he takes another step, can get there. And then obviously we saw Crochet and Houck both do it last year. So, they, like you said, the floor is very high for that rotation. I think as a whole, you would be pretty happy going into the season with that rotation and felt like they did a sufficient job in improving the starting rotation. And then I think you would turn and say, if they sign Buehler, I want to see Crawford used in a trade. They got Fitz, they got Priester, who can be that long relief. They're both basically MLB ready. We don't know exactly how good they'll be, but they both got that potential. You got Criswell is Criswell, right? Yeah, Criswell.
Yep.
He's
Criswell.
still in the he's still in the mix there, and he was surprisingly solid last year when they needed him.
What are you getting back though in a Cutter Crawford trade?
I think you could get like a legit reliever with like maybe 1 or 2 years left to control.
Do you still feel like do you think the bullpen as it's currently constructed has holes? Well, I know. Okay. Let me rephrase, because I feel like unless you have all elite guys, you have holes. Do you feel like if the Red Sox went into the regular season with this bullpen, that bullpen is good enough to be a top 5 to 10 bullpen in baseball?
Not top 5. I think as it currently stands, they'll be in good shape to be like a top 15 to 12 bullpen.
Who's your closer?
Yeah, if you want to
who's your closer right now?
I feel confident. But if you
at the moment, I would go Hendricks. I would go in. It's Hendricks' job, but he needs to show it that he can still do it. But you know, as much as I don't like Aroldis Chapman, he obviously has plenty of closer experience too. So that there's that backup option. I would trust Whitlock as a closer. I don't know if Slayton's ready for that, but you know, I think that they have a pretty good bullpen right now, especially considering, you know, Winkowski was pretty good overall last year, mid to high 3 guy. Wasn't spectacular, but they got Chris Murphy coming back, who again we don't know what he'll be, but he's a long reliever. And then you got Priester and Fitz, who at the moment might not have a spot, but both of them are potential starters, and they could use them as long relievers as well. So I would like to see them add one more piece to that bullpen. Kirby Yates is obviously an option. Tyler Scott's an option. Is it Devin Williams, the Brewers closer?
I think it's Devin Williams.
Yeah. I mean, given that they signed Aroldis Chapman, I would not expect them to be in on a guy like Tanner Scott.
Supposedly they are. Supposedly they're in the mix for him. I don't expect them to go that deep. I would expect them, if they're going to spend that much per year, that they go to Yates, who's older, and you could probably get on like a 1-year, $12 million deal, which is big money for a reliever, obviously. But it's 1-year commitment, and he was downright filthy last year. But obviously, like, you could also look into the trade market, and like I said, like a Devin Williams with Milwaukee. You know, if they feel like they want to trade him, he's got 1 more year, I think, of control, and they're going to lose him. You know, if you dangle a Cutter Crawford and maybe something else, like, you know, decent in the mix, are they going to say, like, you know what, we'll take this number 4 or 5 starter that has 3 or 4 years of control and maybe this mid-tier prospect that we like for 1 year of the closer? In Devin Williams. And then there's obviously, you know, you could find relievers across the MLB, especially if you have a cost-controlled pitcher like Crawford available for some of these like mid-tier to lower-tier teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy there. Where are you guys feeling? What are you feeling on the terms of the right-handed bat? Where do you want to see them move for that? Obviously, there's numerous options. Teoscar, I think Ken Rosenthal said today that he expects Teoscar to end up back in LA. But do you guys have someone in mind that you're really high on?
If the move or the motive, I guess it depends on what happens, what your goal is with Devers. If your goal is to keep him on third base, then I don't necessarily know what the plan would be for a Bregman. They say they want to move him to second base. I don't know. I think I would rather have him at third, just me personally. If you don't get him, I don't know who else I would want. I mean, I know they're attached or at least linked to Santander. I'd be okay with him. He feels to me like another Tyler O'Neill, Hunter Renfroe type guy with like low batting average, but good power. I know, bit way more RBIs last year than Tyler O'Neill had. My ultimate, number one would be Teoscar Hernandez, but I agree. I think I read the same thing about Ken Rosenthal saying he wants to go back, or he's probably expected to go back to the Dodgers. So my number one would be Bregman, depending on what your goal is with Devers. If you want to move him to first, and then move Costas into trade, I'd be very open to that. If you want to just make Devers your DH, they seem very closed off to that idea. So Bregman's my number one, but I don't know where he fits on this team.
Ben?
Yeah, I mean, so yes on Bregman. I feel as if I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because we're talking about what the Red Sox need to do, but this is going to make me sound like it's like, yeah, I wanted to do all this stuff, but the price tag on Bregman, I think, is going to be a little concerning. I don't know what I know, I've heard that he doesn't want to take a pay cut on the AAV. So, if you don't want to give a guy like Bregman, who he's 30 now, I don't know when he turns 31. It's obviously sometime next year. But, if you don't want to give Bregman 7 seasons, are you really going to be comfortable throwing, $33 to $35 million a year at Alex Bregman to play third base? I don't know.
The answer is no.
And so, I mean, but if you want Bregman, you're probably going to have to say 6 years and somewhere between 180 and 200 million is probably what you're going to have to throw at Bregman to get him to come here.
Here's the thing. I think he would have signed now if he had that offer. If someone offered him 180, I think he takes it. Well, especially 200.
Yeah, well, the thing about Bregman too, though, right? So Bregman's only publicly reported offer came from the Astros, and it was 156, which is a massive pay cut. So
AAV wise, yes,
correct. AAV wise, it's a huge pay cut. So, who knows what it would take to get him? I'd love, to have Bregman here, and then, you have Bregman play third, you move Devers to DH. You figure out, Bregman, could play second. I'd rather him play third if I had my wish. And then, you figure out a way to, Devers is your DH. You make minor moves. Obviously, at that point, you'd have to trade Yoshida at that point, because he's not just going to rot on the bench and be a platoon DH guy that only plays once a week. If they can't get Bregman, I'm kind of in the camp. I'd love to see if they could figure out a way to trade for Nolan Arenado. You're not getting a big thumper of a bat anymore. Like, the power's definitely not there like it used to be. But I think that especially at Fenway, he could be a 20 homer guy who, he essentially gives you a top 5, top 3 defensive left side of the infield. As assuming that Trevor Story's healthy, which is a big if. You can't assume health of Story anymore. But if it's him and Story on the left side of the infield, then, again, assuming Story's there, you're talking about one of the best left side of the infields in all of baseball. So Bregman, and then if not, you're getting, I would love the idea of trading for a guy like Nolan Arenado.
What do you do with Devers in that case, though? Because that's kind of the same.
You move
to DH, thought, right?
You move him to DH, and it was. That. That seems to be the biggest thing. I mean, Devers already got his money, so I don't know why he would care about only being a DH. And then playing defense every once in a while. Like, they're paying Devers to hit 30 to 35 homers a year, not make 17 errors at third base. It's like routine plays. Like, he makes these insane plays that are, borderline, I don't want to say web gem, but like borderline high-end defensive plays. And then the routine ball goes right at him and he boots it. So, but like, he's if you went to Devers and you're like, hey, look, we have a Gold Glove player and Nolan Arenado playing third base. You're not playing third base anymore. I don't think Devers ultimately would really care about being a full-time DH when they're paying him to hit 35 bombs a year, not make defensive plays at third base.
He supposedly wants to play there. John Hyman, Scott Porris's buddy, to say the least, he came out and said like the Sox seemed intent on moving Devers to first, and then Breslow came out. It was like Devers is our third baseman, and so I don't really expect him to move off that spot. If Arenado came to Boston, I think it would be because they. Well, not necessarily. I guess technically he could be the right-handed bat as a DH, but it would be because they traded Casas, and not to get down that road. But yeah, that would obviously be a big change. If Bregman's here, I genuinely think it might be to play second base. Would that be something that makes a lot of sense?
But here's the thing. Devers is arguably one of the worst defensive third basemen in all of baseball. So
I agree.
It's obviously correct. Like right now, yes, Rafael Devers is their third baseman. If the Red Sox traded for Nolan Arenado tomorrow, Craig Bosler would say Nolan Arenado is our third baseman. Devers is going to be our DH. He can platoon in defensively, and we're figuring out a way to move Masataka Yoshida out of Boston. It's like
in theory, yeah. I agree with you.
That's what he would say. And the thing is I don't think, I think like the John Heyman report is that it's not coming from the Red Sox. Like that's coming from, that's coming from Devers' camp. But at the same time, it's also an odd narrative because again, like Devers is not a good defensive third baseman. He never has been. So I don't know why Devers would be like, no, I want to make, these difficult plays look routine and then boot routine plays at third. Like he's not going to, if the Red Sox came to him tomorrow and said, we want you to be a primary DH. Well, you can give Arenado a day off every once in a while, but we're bringing in a defensive wizard to play third. I really don't think he would care.
I would believe so, to agree with you. I don't know what to firmly believe in what he actually feels about this situation, but I agree. Like, you pay him for his bat. I don't think he should care.
Right. And it's not like because he's already gotten paid, it's not like he has to be like, oh, hey, look, I also play defense too. Pay me top of the market value.
Yeah.
He already got the contract. It's like there's no reason for you to stand pat and draw the line in the sand and say, I'm going to play third base defensively more than I DH. Like, there's no reason to pound your chest on that narrative anymore.
No, and obviously the ultimate goal is to win. So, if they have a stud third baseman defensively that's a good hitter and can play there over him, he needs to suck it up whether he wants to be a third baseman or not.
Right.
Do what's best for your team. And so, obviously Arenado's an option, Bregman's an option. This Oxnard guy right here, he brought up Suzuki. I really like the idea of Suzuki. He seems to be being floated in the Kyle Tucker conversations. My thought with that is, what is the Astros' plan with Suzuki? Are they bringing him in to play? Are they bringing him to flip? I don't know. But I really like the Suzuki guy. I think he could be a good option for the right-handed bat. Do you guys see Pete Alonso as being an option for them?
I would love to have him.
Certainly an option,
yes. I haven't heard anything about them being in on him at all.
No, well, Alonso's market has supposedly been very quiet. He's okay defensively. He strikes out a lot, but he hits a lot of bombs. I could just see him not being happy with the market and the Sox saying, we'll give you like a 1 year, $25 million deal or 1 year, $20 million deal to fill that, right-handed bat DH spot in the short term. Mm-hmm. And then you could obviously dump Yoshida and hopefully be able to get out from under most of his contract. The other options is to, trade for, try to find that guy like they have the last couple of years with Duvall and Turner, and then they traded for Tyler O'Neill. I'd have to look around the league, but I'm sure there's a couple of other right-handed bats that are a little bit more underrated that aren't really being talked about. Because if you remember, like the Tyler O'Neill trade kind of came from left field when it happened.
Yeah.
Hey, he's a right fielder for us.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to play left in Baltimore. So here's like my pipe dream would be moving Casas in a trade. Not, and again, I think this is wildly unrealistic, which is why I say it's a pipe dream. But if you could sell a team like Toronto on the idea that they could get something of value that's cost controlled for a guy like Vlad Jr., because I don't think he's going to stay in Toronto. Is Toronto going to give him a 10-year, $350 million deal? Probably not.
I mean, they've been offering it to fucking everybody in the offseason, I guess.
So, if Toronto's really not interested in keeping Vladdy long term, again, pipe dream, to make that kind of a swap, trade Casas for Vladdy and then pay him the extension. And now you've solved the first base issue, and you have a young guy who absolutely destroys baseballs at Fenway Park.
Yeah, the way I've kind of looked at possibilities, and I'm not, pushing to trade Casas. Ben and I, you and I have both heard through the grapevine of like the Red Sox supposedly weren't very happy with him during this past season. They think he's a little bit of a drama queen, and that the whole concept of him almost being traded at the deadline, and then all the kind of stirring of that possibility now, it's not super manufactured. It's a little bit manufactured by the media, but there's some legs to it. I see a scenario and just, play with me. You go and trade Casas, and maybe you got to tackle along a piece, and you can get yourself one of the Seattle young pitchers, right? You add them to the rotation. All of a sudden, the rotation looks pretty damn good. You go and you use Yoshida in maybe a low-end prospect or a mid-tier prospect, and go get yourself Arenado. And then you turn and you toss maybe a 1 or 2 year bag at Alonso. And they all of a sudden you moved Casas out, so you moved a lefty out of the mix, which is important. You add Alonso, who's a power hitting righty, and Arenado, who is a moderate power hitter righty as well. And then you add a legit to the rotation, and he wouldn't cost a lot financially. So we're talking about $40 million added to the tax, and you would have a team that in the short term is pretty darn good.
Yeah,
that's a line.
I sign off on that.
I mean, I like the idea. I just get zero inclination that the Mariners are going to trade a young arm for anything other than, I mean, like you'd probably have to give up Casas. Like my guess is based on, and this is total speculation, like given their reluctancy to move their young starting pitching, it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if they were like, okay, you can give us Tristan Casas, Roman Anthony, and a pitcher, and then
that's I think obviously not happening.
Well, right, but I think that's why they would do it, because they know that the Red Sox would never agree to it. That the only way that they would say, hey, like if you give us 3 blue chip pieces, top 3 to 5 prospect in baseball in Roman Anthony, a high ceiling power hitting first baseman in Casas, and then plus something else, then we'll consider trading you a Logan Gilbert or a George Kirby or, whoever. I just don't think that. I think that that's probably what they would say, given how reluctant they've been to move any of their young starting pitchers. But big picture, that would be amazing for the Red Sox. If you can solve, if you can make yourself less lefty heavy, you still get your good first baseman in the short term, and then, you kind of figure it out later with the first baseman situation. You do have a pretty solid window for the next 2 years, and then you extend Garrett Crochet and you find somebody else to play first base. And, at the end of that 2-year window, the next thing you got to figure out is who's going to replace Story at short if he's still here.
Yeah, and then, obviously that's a whole different story. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, you move a lefty bat out. In the short term, you would have, in this scenario, Devers, Arenado, and Alonso. They really can just, split their time between the corners. Obviously, Alonso's not playing third, but you give Devers, basically 2/3 of the game, the season at third. Arenado can split, 2/3 of the season between first and third, and then Alonso could play 2/3 of the season at first. And kind of just intertwine them, and they can all rotate between those three positions with the DH. But that's a scenario where they don't go over the cap. They address their lefty issue. You add two power hitting players, good bats instead of one in Casas, and you add in this scenario, probably a legit, let's say number 2. Let's say they get a Bryce Miller. They don't get Kirby or Gilbert, but it's a Miller or a Wu. All of a sudden, the team is damn good, damn good. And I don't think it's that crazy. I get this weird inclination that they're going to end up moving Casas. It's just a matter of where they're going to move him to and for what, obviously.
Yeah.
There's been smoke, so I could see it too.
Yeah, and so it's so tough because they've only made one notable move really with Crochet, so it's tough to really predict what they're gonna prioritize, whether it's a righty bat or top of the pitcher. But I think there's a way to do both, and I just obviously gave that example. So, we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, hopefully this time next week when Milliken does show up, we could have another signing or two to discuss. But yeah, so I do want to finish up semi-Patriots related. I feel like it would be a mistake if we didn't at least talk about this real quick. Bill Belichick, my boys. He's
pulling a rod. He's pulling a Rodney Dangerfield. He's going back to school.
Yeah, Bill Belichick is the head coach of the UNC football team. Just like everybody expected, he is leaving the NFL and not even going to an SEC school. He's going to an ACC school. That's correct.
Yeah,
I think UNC.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts here? Do you think it's going to be successful? Do you think it's going to be a disaster? How are you feeling about this?
He said he has a full plan. He said that the 400-page report or whatever was fake news, but he said he has a plan on Pat McAfee show of how to handle the NIL, the transfer portal, everything. How to kind of make it a factory for the NFL. So we'll see how it plays out. I think the real reason why he took the job with college is that the NFL market just wasn't there. Nobody wanted him as much, or at least as much as people thought that he would, especially himself. He thought that Jacksonville would be open. He maybe thought that Giants would be open, some other teams, and maybe they're just not there. So I was very surprised to see that he actually accepted the role. His press conference today was pretty cringy in the sense that he made some joke about his kid having his first words be "go" or "beat Duke" or something like that. So, like we expected, he brings in his boys. Mick Lombardi already being hired, expecting everybody else. So, a little surprised, but as more details came in of how he wants to run it, less surprised because it's just him running his own show and him getting kind of all of his boys back together and forming this coaching staff of, Patriots of old.
Yeah, I mean, I would fully expect Patricia to go with him. I fully expect if Judge doesn't leave Ole Miss, who was our special teams coach last year, begins with an A. That's
Sam
skinny
Accord.
ass Accord. There we go. He's an assistant somewhere, maybe in Houston. I could see him obviously going there. And then offensively, does McDaniels go to college? Like, he runs such a pro offense that I feel like he would have a little bit of hard time adapting to college. But Steve is going to follow him there. I imagine he might just be an assistant head coach with Patricia getting the DC job. I don't know if Brian Belichick's going to follow him there after the season. And then Freddie Kitchens is already going to stay there, supposedly. That was like Belichick's first official hire, was to keep Freddie Kitchens on board. But you kind of hit it on the head, Zach, where like, here's the reality. He took this job because he got a strong sense through his agent, through talking to people, that it was very, very possible, if not likely, that he was not going to get a head coaching job offer where A, he has any bit of roster control, or B, he's anything more than just a plain head coach. He wants to control things, and so he just didn't really have a fit. And he might have not even got an offer regardless. You know, obviously we talked about Philly potentially, but they're doing well. Dallas, Jerry Jones just likes to keep his head coaches about 7 years past when they're due.
I don't think Bill would go there. I think they'd butt heads. I don't think him and Jerry would even get along.
Yeah, I heard Jacksonville. They don't plan on firing the GM even if they fire Doug Peterson. There's whispers about like Tampa Bay and maybe Bowles retiring or something like that, but I don't see that happening. So the options are just probably going to be pretty limited. And he said, you know, I don't want the embarrassment. I want to coach, but B, I don't want the embarrassment of missing on another round of psych hires. And so he took this UNC job. And you know, I wish him well. That's the thing. Like on the X app, I've kind of become a Belichick hater, I guess, just because people live in a delusion. But I do wish him well. I would love to see UNC like get back on track and become like a really good quality program, and then maybe Steve takes over and goes from there. But I mean, I think it's going to be very entertaining, and it could be a shit show, but it will at least be an entertaining shit show. But I hope he does well. I hope he figures it out, and they can create a new legacy in the college game.
Yeah, and listening to Joe Murray today on Felger and Maz, I was doing some errands before this. They were explaining the contract that Bill signed. There's a buyout where if he leaves
before June 1, 2025.
Yeah, it's $10 million that he has to pay towards the school. After that, it's $1 million. So to me, that just leaves the door open. And this isn't my take. This is Joe Murray's take. But it leaves the door open for an NFL program to be like, hey, we actually fired this coach. We want you to come in and run it. We'll just pay $10 million to UNC. Don't worry about it. So there is that option of.
If he doesn't want to pay that, he's that like the timing of June 1st. That's after the coaching cycles are hired. Yeah. Obviously, they get fired usually in like January, and they make hires in February and maybe early March. So that would be kind of locking him into at least 2 years there. But I don't buy the Wickersham bullshit that he wanted to give a big FU to the NFL and blah 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 blah. If he was going to get a head coaching job offer, he'd be back in the NFL. But no, yeah, that's. I think that he has a good chance to succeed, but I just don't know if how the biggest issue over the last decade was him being able to handle this generational gap change that we've seen in personalities. Now he's going to be dealing with a bunch of kids, like literal kids. Like I think back to when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I was a freaking hooligan. To deal with them, Bill Belichick, I just think it it could be a shit show, but I mean, I hope he has learned over the last year that he needs to adjust himself in his coaching approach.
Yeah, that's my concern is how is he going to connect with the college kids? You know, I can just see him like on the recruiting trail. You know, 72-year-old.
He's supposedly meeting with some 4-star QB recruit tonight.
Yes, so you know, just on the recruiting trail, just with his monotone, like curmudgeon attitude.
Well, Brady did the imitation best. It was like, do you want to come here? We don't really need you to come here, but I guess you can come here, and like we could possibly find a spot for you, if you work, and yeah.
Yeah,
that's exactly it too. That's exactly what's going to happen.
We'll do what's best for the North Carolina program. We'll play you where you give us the best chance to succeed.
Do they play Cincinnati this year?
I don't think they play Cincinnati ever.
Cincinnati.
Yeah, why Cincinnati?
I'm just joking. Though we're on to Cincinnati.
I was like, where are you? It's like, where are you going with this?
No.
That'd be good if they did.
What I'd love to know is if he's going to coach the bowl game because they play at Fenway Park in 2.5 weeks.
I think Kitchens will be the head coach because it's literally next week or in like less than 2 weeks.
It's on the 28th. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Kitchens will be the head coach and run the ship, but Belichick will be on the sideline, almost like a observant, just a spectator of everything and getting a hint of the players and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they're I don't know, I'd have to look at the stats, but they had a wide receiver enter the transfer portal today.
Yeah, I did see that. It'll be interesting. I mean, I think it's going to be here's the one thing, and we can finish before the state your takes. There is a side of this where I say there are going to be players that don't want to play for him because they can't handle it, and that's the generational change. I think the players are a little bit more softer, but then I also think you're going to have it's going to be like more polar opposite with the attractiveness of him and playing for him. I think it's usually for most coaches, it's like, oh, yeah, I would maybe play for them. This is going to be like either no or yes, 100%. Like, I'm not interested in it.
Yeah. He can bring his girlfriend on the recruiting trail and be like, you can bang my girlfriend if you come to North Carolina.
All right. 98.5 was talking today and basically was like, yeah, you're going to see some parents pushing their kid to go there because they know what it could do for them at the next level. So I wanted, obviously parents have somewhat of an input where their kids end up going. So you'll see, because a lot of these young kids, you're 17, 18 years old. Like the last time Belichick was good was what, 2018? These kids were 12. Yeah. Like these kids are 12.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a good point.
And so, they know the legacy, but none of these kids experience Belichick. None of these kids, like growing up, really experienced him. Again, even before 2018, like they were 6 years old when they beat Seattle. Like they didn't know anything at that point.
If you're 18 now, you were 7 or 8 years old when the Patriots were beating the Seattle Seahawks.
They weren't even alive for the first 3 Super Bowls. So like his legacy will be definitely different to that age kids. So you're gonna maybe see parents have a little bit more of an influence in saying, hey, like if they'll know their kid if they can handle that type of coaching. But if you can handle hard coaching, it should be attracted to you, right? Like you're saying, like if you're a good college, high school recruit, and you're like, I'm a hard worker, I can handle it. I feel like that's a great situation to go to in terms of increasing your chances in the league and getting the NFL.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. All right. Let's finish this bad Larry up with state your takes. Which one do you want to start us off here?
I can go.
I can go first, Ben.
Go ahead, Benny boy.
So within the last couple of days, a gentleman by the name of Josh Williams, who I don't know if you guys will know who he is. He is I'm going to bring it up real quick. He is a representative from the great state of Ohio who introduced legislation.
Oh, I've seen this.
I saw this
about an hour ago.
Called the OHIO, Ohio, for those illiterate people who watch the show, Sportsmanship Act that makes planting a flag at midfield in the entire state of Ohio is now going to be a felony that they can prosecute under the law. So this is just a specific example over a broad scope take that I probably have a laundry list of people that will fall in line with this idea that politics has no business in sports at this level. Obviously, the big one 3 years ago, was it 3 years ago when the NFL basically forced the Washington Redskins to change their name? It was within the relatively recent past. They more or less forced them to change their name. They basically backhandedly forced Dan Snyder to sell the team and change the name. Quick tangent. Supposedly the Redskins are coming back because the federal government got sued, but whatever. So I think just big picture, I think, for stuff like this, like politics doesn't belong in sports. I love how like Baker Mayfield's attitude on this. I love his approach to it. It's like, well, this is what makes rivalries in college sports so great. Sure, I don't think we need, brawls at center field, 50-yard line, because, Michigan stakes a flag on the big red O. Like, you don't need a brawl over it. But I think that
of course Baker approves it. He flew his flag and shoved the Oklahoma flag down in, like, I don't know, was it Texas?
Yeah, Texas, Oklahoma State, like all of them, fill in the blank. So, I mean, I love it. I love how this stuff kind of fuels the fire, because now Ohio State gets a chance to, like, next year they get to go into the big house and try to, return the favor. But, for stuff like this, I just think that, politics has no business in sports. And, it's a real shame that somebody feels like they're going to introduce legislation and make something like this, try to make something like this, not part of the game anymore, whether it passes or not. But like, this stuff just kind of pisses me off.
Fair enough. Zach, how about you?
So they've downplayed it, or at least he has, Breslow has, or in an interview. But I think the report that came out about him and Cora, and I guess Kennedy too, having a rift over Bregman, I think that's probably more real than we live on, or we are led on to believe. And I think it's going to come to a head at some point this season. I think we've already seen Cora and Heim sort of not see eye to eye. I don't get the sense that Cora is a analytics guy first. I think he's more of a feel for the game type, player manager, and Breslow is very much more in line with Heim Bloom. So I predict that, again, the Breslow Cora rift is more serious than we've been led to believe in the media, and I think it's going to come to a head at some point this season.
Yeah, I mean, his comments today on WEI, he downplayed it, but when you kind of listen to someone talk, you can kind of get a sense in their voice. He seemed pretty annoyed that Bregman story got out.
Definitely.
Which tells me that he probably thinks that either Cora or like Kennedy like leaked it. Maybe Cora's doing it because he's trying to put the pressure to sign him, or Kennedy's leaking it to show, oh, well, ownership's willing to spend Breslow. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's certainly, I think, a legit possibility. But we'll see how it kind of plays out. For myself, I mean, I've talked about it a couple times already tonight. Through what, we've heard, and just the continued floating of the idea, I don't think Tristan Casas will be on the starting roster for the Boston Red Sox come, I think it's like March 29th, opening day, something like that. I think that he's going to end up being traded. I don't know for what. I hope it would be for a young Seattle pitcher, Maybe it's to Pittsburgh for someone like Jared Jones or Bubba Chandler. Maybe it's to Miami, and he can go, lay down in the sun every day down in Miami with his no shirt on and do yoga and all that type of shit. But my gut tells me he's not going to be here. And I don't necessarily want to trade Casas, but if the deal's right, the deal's right. I'm not afraid to trade him. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll see what happens on that end.
Yeah. I could see it too.
That's going to end it for this week. I'm actually, I got to jump on in about an hour and a half on Pod by the River. I'm a judge tonight with Ed Han and them.
What are you judging?
They do a pick a side where it's random arguments and there's judges of who gave the better argument. It's the best way to kind of describe it.
Well,
I gotta stay up. It's 8:30, dude. I'm usually in bed by 8:30.
And you call me and you call me the old man.
A lot of times I'll just go up to bed. I don't fall asleep till 10:30 usually. But
yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I like to just go lay in bed and just sit there and sit on my phone, watch TV and kind of decompress. But I guess I'm not doing that until closer to 9:30.
Contemplate the life choices that got you there.
Yeah, I might need to go drink a energy drink just to stay awake.
Good luck with that.
All right. That's going to do it for this week. Like I said, we'll be back I think next Thursday, 1 week from today, 1 week exactly, with Section 10 and 98.5's Tyler Milken. He had to reschedule last minute, but next Thursday, be there. Hopefully we have a much more clear, which I think we will, a much more clear path to what the Red Sox are going to be doing this year, and we'll have a lot more to talk about on that end.
Let's hope.
So, all right. Until next time, we're Raise the Banner. Take care.
Until next time.